I want to talk about electricity, and I want to talk about what's going on with your electricity prices. I will cover transmission because that's going to be a big part that's going to affect you in the future. But when I was doing my research into electricity pricing, we have two different markets going on. We have a wholesale market, which you don't participate in, but by the way, you do pay for. And then we have a retail market, which is you. You are not considered a market participant, just so you know. I don't know how that works because the economic classes I took said the people who purchased the electricity had to be part of the market. What the AESO does, that stands for the Alberta Electric System Operator. And what they do is they bid for electricity every hour. They want, all the providers are required to sell all their electricity to the AESO every hour. I want to think about this as you put, because there's some real questions that come up on this one. We know who all the generators are. And I can name you a few real quick. You got the Genesee plant, you got the Keep Hills plant, you got Sundance, you got Sheerness. I mean, these are all the plants around this province. They produce so much electricity, and they're required every hour to bid all their capacity into the market. What our government does, what our government allows, which is the AESO, who claims to be independent, but what the AESO does is they take the lowest offer to the highest offer. In my example up on the screen, I took this example pretty much from the AESO. If the AESO needed 8,000 megawatts, the first 4,000 I'm showing you offered is free from hydro. So that's half the capacity came in, and those generators are willing to take zero. They're willing to take zero for that electricity. They're willing to give it to you for free. Don't worry about it. You've never gotten free electricity. I know you haven't. Now for the next 3,800 megawatts, I just put down there coal. So now we have a total of 7,800 megawatts. And then for the last 200 megawatts of power required to get to that 8,000, the bid comes in at basically $450 a megawatt. So that would be your total cost for that hour of what the price of electricity should be. And that price should be about $261,000. But that's not what we pay. Whatever the highest bid is, everyone gets paid that. So rather than pay $261,000, we pay $3,600,000. Big difference in what they were willing to sell it for and what we actually paid. So I like to put this, because this isn't far-fetched. I wish this was far-fetched, but it's not extreme. It's not extreme at all. In this example, I just want to give you just how crazy this system is. Imagine the AESO needed 10,000 megawatts for the next hour. And 9,999 megawatts was free. And 1 megawatt came in at $500. The price should have been $500 for the whole hour, if demand stayed static. I want to make that clear. For my example, it's static demand. The price should have been $500, and we basically bought it for $5 million. How's that system working for you? How does that cost get passed on? It does. Eventually, it gets passed on. Industry will basically pay that and pass that on to us. And that's why, and I tell people this, when you look at the ancillary costs, which is distribution, transmission, administration, depending on which bills you get, they're all there, are rising, rising, and rising. Most all of you have electricity that's less than half of your total bill. And people say, if I'm on a fixed contract, I can save. Bunk. Total bunk. And your government's marketing that. If you're on a fixed contract, it will smooth out the spikes over the long run. Over the long run, everyone's going to pay pretty much the same. Just in the short run, you will smooth out the bumps if you're on a contract. But then again, if electricity does spike up and down, the people on with no contract will have extremely high prices one month, extremely low prices the next. That's all. Be very volatile. Do you remember I told you about the free electricity? I was shocked when I got this letter. I was thinking the free electricity ran right around 1,000 megawatts, 2,000 megawatts. They say that we get 6,000 to 7,000 megawatts of power, it's megawatt hours, offered into the market on a regular basis for free, that they're willing to take zero. Our demand is only between 6 and 8 on any given day. That's an incredible amount of electricity that is offered in for free, and there's real good reasons for this. But you need to understand what your government thinks about free electricity. They think it's uneconomic. This is our government. This is our AESO. And this is right out of the MSA, stands for Market Surveillance Administrator. They're like a sister corporation to the ASO. They're created by our government. They effectively work for our government. So the ASO wrote me and they said, back in 2011, 6 times the market hit zero. And that's what was paid. If you look at the ASO documentation, every time it hits zero, what does the ASO do? This is a very fancy word. It's called clearing the market. What does that mean? It means putting an artificial floor price in. That's what it means. They clear the market and they start over again. They don't allow free electricity to really get passed along. So that's what they're saying. If they institute certain supply surplus procedures, I just get such a tickle out of their clever use of words. What they've done here is when the price hits zero, they want to clear that market so they can jack the price up. And it's interesting because they allow the companies to gouge us up to $999 a megawatt. Now, I'm just going to put this out there for your consideration. You know the plants around this province. We don't get new plants every day. Genesee's been there a long time. Keephills, Sundance, Sheerness, they've been around. They make all this electricity. Does it cost them any more to make electricity at $45 a megawatt versus $999? What's the cost of actually making it? I'm here to tell you the cost of making that electricity is fairly static, extremely cheap. The older the plant, the cheaper it is to make that electricity, because most of the cost is the capital costs of building the plant. Once those capital costs are really paid off, the operational cost of a coal generator is extremely low. It's extremely low. It's almost a machine to print money, particularly if you're gouging the public at $999 a megawatt, because it costs them the same to produce that electricity as it does if they sell it for $45. What our government has done to create a market is they do require all the generators to bid in the electricity, all the capacity. You've got to sell it all. But what they allow them to do is bid 7 times. They can withhold electricity from the market. I'll give you an example. Let's say Genesee has 600 megawatts that they can sell into the market today. They can offer to sell in 500 megawatts the first time and then wait. And then 6 more times they can jack the price up with another offer. In effect, they can bid against themselves. And all the generators can do that to jack the market up. It's called economic withholding. It's illegal in most jurisdictions, and people go to jail for it. In Alberta, it's perfectly legal, and that's what we operate by. It's absolutely staggering to me that we allow the wholesale market to do that. That's the wholesale market. The retail market's real simple. The retail market is based on what I think the price will be next month, and that's what we bill you. That's it. Where's the formula? How do we know? That's how your government knew a month ago that your electricity bills are going to get gouged in January. They knew in December. It's like, who knows that? What's the stock market going to be next month? If you knew that, you wouldn't be here. You'd be in the Bahamas because you'd be really rich. Yet they're out there saying we got a free market. Oh, by the way, the price is going to be up here next month. And that's what they're doing. And they call that a market. That's not a market. That's a scam. The easiest way to deal with this, the easiest way, without making any major changes, is just deal with actual pricing. Whatever the wholesalers are willing to offer their electricity for, that's what we pay on the wholesale market. End of story. None of this, and we stop this jacking up the prices with 7 bids. None of that. You bid in your whole capacity at once, and we take the lowest prices, and that's the competitive market. We pay actual cost, not the highest price offered, and everyone gets paid that. We pay exactly what the actual cost is. With the retail side, it should be very simple. You get paid for what you use when it's metered and you know exactly what the cost is. End of story. This idea of guessing what I think the price will be next month, so that's what I'm going to bill you today. They're making it up. And in my mind, that's wrong. This is where I get into my favorite part of the presentation, which is dealing with transmission line. To the average person, this is a bunch of lines on a map of Alberta. When I looked at this, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And I want to explain this to you because this is absolutely incredible. It's a bunch of lines on a map, and that's the way the ASO map actually looks. That's a map of the Alberta grid just showing the 240 lines and the 500 kV lines. The red lines represent 500 kV AC. The blue lines represent 240 kV AC systems. When you go home tonight and you look at your electricity bill, look at your transmission charge, that's what you're being billed on. These are the big lines in the province. Go home, if you got a $100 bill and you're a resident of a city or a town, your transmission charge will be somewhere around $10 or $12 for every $100 on your bill. And I looked at that and I couldn't believe what I saw, because what the government was proposing was to build an HVDC line between Genesee and Langdon. Now, to the average person, it's like, okay, we got a new transmission line. That one transmission line, that green dotted line, represents the capacity or the potential capacity as all those blue lines combined. And the way I like to put it in context, imagine the QE2, which is a 4-lane highway. We're going to upgrade this. And we draw a line on a map. And that line on a map represents a 32-lane highway between Edmonton and Calgary, not a 4-lane highway. That's what you're seeing there, is a representation of a HVDC line that has a capacity in comparison to a road system of a 32-lane highway. It's going to cost billions of dollars. Altalink says they can build it for $2 billion or less. I dispute that. I don't believe it for a minute. I think they'll be lucky to keep it under 4. And I don't think they have incentive to keep it under 2, and I'm going to explain that in a second. But what I want to explain to you is they can't use that. Even according to Altalink, $2 billion between Edmonton and Calgary, they can't use it. It's right in their own documentation. It cannot be fully utilized. And I'm going to explain to you what a contingency is. It means the lights go out. You build that line and you put any reasonable capacity into that line, and that's what they mean. They cannot fully utilize it. They won't give me the figure what they think they can get away with, because I think it's extremely low. If you were to energize that line and have any kind of lightning storm, ice storm, wind storm, doesn't matter, south of Benalto in particular, because all these lines are so close together, you'd shut the lights off in the entire province. Take about 48 hours to get a lot of the lights back on, take it probably a whole month to get the entire system up and running again. The economic loss to this province would be staggering. And they know it. They cannot use that one line. $2 billion investment. Who would design that? That cannot be fully utilized until a second line is built. That's what they wrote. See, those little black triangles represent generators. And I'm going to explain this very simple. If you've ever worked a stovetop that was electric and saw that heating coil turn red, that's what would happen to some of these transmission lines or components. If you energize that HVDC line and then lost it, suddenly things would start heating up quite quickly. That's a lot of current. It's got to go somewhere. So what happens is, if you were to lose that line, those generators would immediately, within microseconds, look to switch. If it had nowhere to switch, it has to shut off. They go into self-protect. The first generator that would go down would cause the next generator to go down, which then would cause the next generator to go down. Just like dominoes, it's called cascading. It's what happened to Toronto in 2003. So how is our ASO going to fix that? Well, you give it a line to switch to, so you double down. You build another 32-lane highway from Edmonton to Calgary. And it goes from a substations in Gibbons all the way down to Brooks. But how is this going to switch to it? How are you going to get that electricity from Genesee up to Gibbons so it can go down to Brooks? And you build a line called the Heartland line. And what our government told our people up in the Heartland is, we need to get power up to the Heartland. That's why we need to build this line. Now, were they lying? No. They need to get the power up to Heartland. What they didn't tell anyone was it ends up in Brooks. No power, no additional power gets out up at the Heartland. It goes all down to Brooks. You go down to Brooks, you say, do you know you're getting 2,000 megawatts of power to the north side of your city? What are you going to do with it? They know nothing about it. Nobody's even told them. I said, unless you guys are planning on putting heating coils underneath your road for the winter for snow removal, I don't know what you're going to use 2,000 megawatts for.